Before we get started, I would like to refer anyone who needs translator services to Ms. Paula Balbuena in the back.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. Buenas noches, habla Paula Balbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 518-020-865 más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 518-020-865 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la página en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Balbuena. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Modesto City Schools 1459 regular board meeting of March 29, 2021. The meeting is now called to order. During closed session, the board gave direction to legal counsel. Now I'll take roll call. Student Rep Carranza. Trustee Brown.
I'm present.
Trustee Irvin.
Present.
Trustee Maestas.
Present.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee Mejia.
Present.
And we have President West via Teams.
Present.
And Vice President Lopez present. Great. Well, everyone, please stand up and join me for a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Please sit. I just want to say good evening, everyone. This open session of the meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and the recordings will be available for viewing a day after the board meeting. Modesto City Schools board meeting has been adjusted for the public to follow state guidelines on social distancing until further notice. This actually was taken in response to Governor's Executive Order 92520 and Resolution 1920-17, delegating authority to take necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus, also known as COVID, adopted by Modesto City Schools on March 18, 2020. Regarding public comment, MCS has provided an opportunity for public to provide comment. It is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given the opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email address, or appear in person before the board. This practice will continue until further notice. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. Now, we'll move on to A4, Pledge of Allegiance, and we have first grader Avia Heggie, who is an outstanding scholar and who's going to introduce herself before leading us into the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Ava, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ava Heggie. I'm a DLA. Miss Bautista is my first grade teacher. I'm special because I can speak Spanish, hola, and English, hi, and Hungarian, sia. I like to play the piano and to ski, and I love to skate. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher and a scientist like my daddy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was very adorable, and I forgot to mention that Ava is from Bright Heart Elementary School, so thank you for that, Ava. And now we're moving on to A5, the Superintendent Noguchi's welcomes.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us again this evening. Today, as you know, is a very exciting day for Modesto City Schools because today, after over a year, we actually now have in-person learning for TK through 12. So we are very excited. We aren't where we want to be. We want to be able to have all of our kids back 5 days a week, 100%, but we are getting there, and today is certainly a first step in that. I want to say a couple thank yous. I do want to thank everyone in Modesto City School, the Modesto City School family, for really doing what it takes to be able to get through this last year, constantly changing course, pivoting where necessary, talking about how to manage change. We've definitely learned as a whole world, as a society, as a community, and as a school district, how to deal with all the changes in front of us. We've worked really well together. We haven't always agreed to where we need to go, but I'm very thankful for the relationships that we have had, not only with our union partners, but with the board, with staff, with cabinet. I think we've all worked hard, and we've done a great job. We're going to be able to look back and be proud of the work that we've done. But more importantly, I really want to thank the students. The students have really taken the brunt of this pandemic, and they've been tucked away in their houses and in their bedrooms and wherever else they could find a quiet place to be able to do the learning. So I do want to really give a shout out to the students and thank you for their patience. Thank you for doing your best each and every day, because if you do your best each and every day, we will in fact get through this. So thank you for that. Now, as we continue to work towards opening schools, simultaneously, we're working for the summer and the learning mitigation plans and all the work that we have planned relative to engagement opportunities and also academic opportunities. We will come back in the next board meeting and showcase for you and get your input and feedback on the plans for this summer and also opening schools as well. Lastly, because I know a lot of folks are very interested in this topic, and that is graduations. If we can continue to stay in the red, we can continue to plan for in-person graduations. Guaranteed, it is not going to look the same as we remember them, but we are going to work hard at working to get some in-person graduations. We're not sure what that looks like, but we are beginning to engage in that process. The state of California just brought down guidelines Saturday on what we can do relative to some guidelines on working on graduation. So we will be coming back with some ideas around that as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Vice President Lopez. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this moment, I'm going to open up the floor for Board of Education members report. Do I have lights? President West, will you be giving the report?
I have none this evening, thank you.
Great. So we'll start off with Trustee Mejia.
Thank you. I wanted to report. I was invited to speak at the Parent Institute graduation, so I want to thank Mady and her team for the incredible work they've done in combination with the Parent Institute. They had 121 people enrolled in the program, and I was able to graduate 85. I was able to speak to them, kind of share my experience. And out of that, a very particular story, we had a young man approach me from one of the parents. I offered them, they wanted to talk to me. And I had a young man that was at San Jose State, and he was a first-generation college student, and so we were able to speak, and we have a couple more meetings scheduled to talk a little bit more. But I was super excited. I know the partnership between the Parent Institute and Modesto Schools is being great, and parents were super encouraged, and these are parents that would like to participate. And I learned that this was the first time for many of them that they use Zoom to join a class. So it will be good over the long haul for engagement of our parents in the district through this program. So I want to thank Modesto Schools, Mady and her team, and the Parent Institute for allowing me to do this. And thank you for the invitation to invite me to be the keynote speaker.
Thank you. I had a couple of meetings I attended. I attended the CSBA San Joaquin Central Valley Delegate Assembly with other board members, and it was good to hear what their plans are, planning for summer school, also concerned about just different issues that have been going on with their students, and some districts are still having struggles with their unions. So I was like, hey, we're doing our district has done a lot of good work and building relationships. So I was pleased to report that to them. And then also we had the CSBA Ledge Action Week happened I think it was last week or the week before, and I was able to meet with Assemblyman Adam Gray's office and their staff. And so that was it was really unique to be able to do it on Zoom, but it was a great meeting. His staff members were awesome, and they gave us a lot of good information, and we could ask them questions. We let them know that we were concerned about certain bills that were before the legislature that would be harmful for districts. And so it was a good conversation all around. There was only like 5 of us on there, but everybody seemed to be very engaged, and it was a good conversation. So I appreciate the input from the other board members around our county and other counties that were on that call, because it was a good one. So those are my 2 meetings I wanted to report on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Trustee Brown?
Yes, it's refreshing to hear the news about the Parent Institute graduation and the success of how that has gone with the electronic format that they've been under. So glad to see that we're getting that great participation. As is typical, I had the opportunity to attend the construction meeting this month, and want to just report that things are moving fast forward and lots of great things happening. We got introduced to a lot of those things at the last meeting, but it's just exciting to go and participate and see what strength we have in that department and all the great progress that's happening. It will be fun to see summer roll around and be able to hopefully go on tour and see what progress has been made over the last year and a half.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Trustee Brown. And we'll be moving on to ACE. Is there anyone else that we didn't catch? Okay, great. We'll be moving on to A7. We have a lot of great people in our district, and some of them we're going to celebrate today. So for that, we're going to pass it on to Ms. Noonan
Great.
for our recognitions.
Thank you so much, Vice President Lopez. So first up tonight, we are going to celebrate a student with outstanding character through our Character Education Recognition Program. Tonight, we are celebrating Catherine Everett Elementary School 4th grader Asia Mukulis for the character trait Perseverance. Nominated by 4th grade teacher Alexandra Contreras, who shared, at the beginning of the school year, Asia struggled with like many with all the new and advanced technology. At the beginning of the year, her favorite words to say were, "I can't." It all changed when the learning hubs opened and she had a quiet environment to work. She learned to ask clarifying questions and is an outstanding student who comes to class every day ready to learn. Asia is extremely deserving of this award. So congratulations, Asia. All right. Next up, we're going to celebrate our MCS hero. Tonight, we are recognizing Burbank Principal Kristen Penu. Nominated by Burbank Elementary teachers Alethea Bateman and Jennifer Filippini, who shared, Mrs. Penu has held our school together through this pandemic. She came in as our new principal in 2019-2020 before COVID-19 happened. Mrs. Penu helped the entire staff navigate through the changes by building a community and collaborating with leadership. She promotes a positive working atmosphere and is a great leader and role model for staff and students. Mrs. Penu always leads by example, and it is our honor to nominate her for this award. And finally, tonight's special recognition, we are recognizing the James C. Enoch's Academic Decathlon team for being the first place winners at the 41st Annual Stanislaus County Academic Decathlon. That is a mouthful. The Academic Decathlon coaches are Enoch's teacher Wendy Brown and co-coach Tyler Ray. So now what I'm going to go through, it's not over yet. It's even better because we're gonna show you pictures of all the students. So first up, let me make sure I'm on the right slide. Okay, we have the team members are Michael Ballerite and Umari. Sorry, I practiced her name many times. I want to try to be as respectful as I can. Umarveer Brar. Then we have Amy Dancy and Maitri Halapa. Next up, Emma Lopez and Simran Man. We have Sophia Mayrogi and Emma Ritchie. And Ruhin Sidhu and Sophia Talley. This event is hailed as the biggest academic event for local high schools. The decathlon is a series of tests, speeches, and interviews featuring this year's theme, the Cold War. Speech and interview presentations were conducted by Zoom, while essay and objective testing were completed online. According to the Stanislaus County Office of Education Student Events Manager Cheryl Goulart, the goal of the decathlon is to stimulate intellectual growth and scholastic success. In addition to Enox High School, 10 additional local area high schools participated in this year's event. And just this past weekend, actually, on March 27th, 77 teams from all over the state competed in the 42nd Annual State Academic Decathlon. And we're excited to announce that of the previous students I mentioned, Amy Dancy earned 5 medals, 2 gold, 1 silver, and 2 bronze. The K Club bronze pin for scoring more than 7,000 points, and the overall bronze division 3 individual high scorer. Michael Ballerite earned a silver medal in honors music and the K Club silver pin for scoring more than 8,000 points. And overall, this is just awesome. Enox placed 10th out of 38 for Division III overall teams. I mean, that's just fantastic. So on behalf of the Board of Education and the Superintendent, congratulations to the Enox Decathlon team. And that completes tonight's recognitions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noonan. And now we'll be moving on to approval of consent agenda. Before we approve, Ms. Chamber, are there any members of the public wishing to speak on items on the consent agenda? Thank you. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public via email?
No, not on the consent agenda.
Thank you. So with that being said, is there any anyone needing to
I had 2 ARs that might go along with the 2 BPs. I didn't know if we approved them without the discussion. I had called the superintendent today. Should we pull those off and put them on with the 2 BPs?
That's up to you.
Okay, let's just do that, and then we'll make sure that they all are the same, in case there was any change in them.
So which ones are those?
They are, let me find them. I apologize. It is, they're under, let's see. Sorry, because I just read them in the thing and I don't know how to find them on here. They should say, okay, so it is D at 3 and D4.
D3 and D4?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And I just, if we put them with the board policy items, so D3 would go with B4.
Okay.
And then D4 would go with B5. So we could
B4.
have them with those.
So we have a motion to pull D3 and D4 into our discussion and action items, B4 and B5 respectively. Do I hear a second?
Okay with that?
Do we have to second that? Yeah.
And then
Okay.
Do we hear a second to pull those 2 items?
And put them with the, thank you, Mr.
We got a
Brown.
second by Mr. Trustee Brown. All those in favor? At this moment, we're just voting on pulling the 2 items into discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Charlene had her hand up. That's fine.
And Charlene said aye as well. Okay, so those will be pulled into our discussion and action items. Now, on the rest of the consent agenda, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as is?
Motion.
Motion by trustee Mejia and seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Great. That leads us to approval of order of discussion and action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion items?
I so move.
Trustee Mejia motions. Do I hear a second? Second by trustee Irvin. All those in favor of approving the order of the consent action items? Please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Approval passes. Sorry. Great. Now, A10, period for public presentation. Ms. Chambers, is there any members of the public who wish to speak? Thank you very much, Ms. Chambers. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public via email or voicemail?
Yes, I have two comments that I will read right now for the period of public presentation.
Thank
The
you.
first comment is from Jacob Cardoza. Jacob is an area leader of California High School Democrats, and the topic is athletics and grade requirements. The comment is as follows. As we approach the beginning of in-person academics in our high schools this spring, we have found that many students are excited to finally resume their normal education procedures. However, many high school students, especially in the Modesto and Stanislaus area, have not qualified for their sports due to struggles found to the immediate change in their education. Many of our members have noted that they are student athletes and have voiced their concern about their personal mental health and their peers' mental health. We have noted and appreciate the previous amendment to sports eligibility, but we feel as if it leaves no room for motivation, as many students still cannot compete for the sport that they feel passionate about. We would like to suggest a temporary amendment to all MCS high school sport eligibility to allow any student to compete in high school athletics for the rest of this school year. We would like to thank all the members of the board for taking the time to discuss this. Thank you, Jacob Cardoza. The next comment is from Mihawk Baines, and the comment is also on athletics and grade requirements. Good evening, Modesto City School Board. My name is Mihawk Baines. I am Vice Chairman of the Student Site Council at Peter Johansen High School. No one could have predicted the uncertainty of COVID-19 and how hard it impacted us worldwide. One of the effects this pandemic brought upon us was our schools not being able to open and sports being canceled. With this online schooling being pushed upon kids, it has taken a big toll on our grades. Some students, myself included, used to have a 2.0 or better until this school year. I know there are other students in the same position who are struggling with online schooling. We don't get the same education as you would get if you were in actual class with the help of a teacher. In a normal school setting, we would be able to work one-on-one with a teacher as well as hands-on activities, which most athletes are more successful with. Now, with school opening back up and sports coming back to play, some student athletes are being punished for our grades during this mentally challenging time. The mental health of student athletes has deteriorated. Allowing us to play would not only boost morale, but also bring back normalcy to our student population. Because of their grades, some athletes, like seniors, are missing out on their last opportunity to play in a high school game. We should let our student athletes play sports in the 2 months of school we have left. On behalf of all student athletes, we thank you for your time and consideration in this difficult time. And Mr. Baines also attached a petition that shows people of the community's opinion on this topic, and that's been distributed to everyone. And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noonan, and everyone who submitted a comment. We'll be moving on to B1, Student Representative Report. Trustee Carranza, Board Representative, Student Representative Carranza.
Hello, everyone. The Inter-High Council and I met 2 weeks ago to prepare for the Tournament of Talent. All the schools are working to ensure their site talent show is completed before April 1st. Filming for this year's virtual Tournament of Talent will take place at Downey on April 9th between 5 and 8 p.m. Most of the high school leadership programs have released their applications for the 2021 to 2022 school year and have begun evaluating some of the candidates. All of the high schools were in the process of preparing for their campuses to reopen, and we're excited to finally be in the red tier. My first day back on campus was today, and it was great to see my friends and teachers back in person. Trustee Brown brought up a great point at the last board meeting, that the schools need to ensure the students, especially freshmen, feel welcome and safe while coming to campus for the first time this year. Since today was the first day of reopening, many high school leadership programs ran events and tables to ensure the students know where their classes are and feel excited to return to campus. At our last Inter-High Council meeting, not many people had new ideas, so we intend to discuss this further at our meeting this week. The school site council representatives are leading discussions with their leadership programs, and they will be sharing the input at our meeting as well. Thank you for listening to my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Carranza? No? Thank you very much. Oh.
Yes, I would like to know, so how was the atmosphere on campus when you were, I talked to my daughter, got her pitch on today, because she was part of Group A too as well, got her feedback on the atmosphere on campus. What were students like on your campus there at Modesto High?
It was very low, I would say very mellow. A lot of my classes only had about 3 to 5 people and probably another 30 online. So the classes were still very small, but at lunch and during passing periods, I was surprised to see a lot of students were on campus. And I would say most of the students looked upbeat. Most of my friends I talked to were excited to be on campus, but I'm hoping there'll be more people coming to school later on. And we're just kind of waiting for people to tell them that, it's okay to come back. And the atmosphere, I think it's pretty great. I'm excited to have people come back.
Any other questions or comments?
I can say that Mr. Zerley just texted me and let me know that there were 2,000 7th through 12th grade lunches served today. So if that's any indication of the kids that are there, that's something. So, and we know that not all students eat lunch that come to school, but at least we had 2,000 of them that came forward.
Thank you for that. We'll be moving on now to our California Schools Employees Association report. Do we have a report from CSEA?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. And so then we'll be moving on to B3, report on the State Seal of Civic Engagement, and that is Ms. Newton. Welcome, Ms. Newton.
Good evening, Vice President Lopez, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and cabinet members. I am Kim Newton, a Senior Director with Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development, and tonight I am really excited to share a newly designed pathway for students to earn the State Seal of Civic Engagement. Modesto City Schools is one of a few districts across the state identified as an early adopter of the State Seal of Civic Engagement. This is the right thing to do for our students. The purpose of my presentation is to provide a report on the development of the pathway for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. I'll discuss its alignment with Modesto City Schools' strategic goals. I will review the pathway recommendations from the teacher committee and discuss our next steps. So the State Seal of Civic Engagement, actually it was Susan Telemontes Eggman, our local state representative, that authored Assembly Bill 24. It passed in 2017 and established the development of the criteria for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. This seal identifies qualifying high school graduates who have demonstrated excellence in civic education. And the intent of this pathway is really to encourage and create a pathway for elementary through secondary students to become engaged civically as well as demonstrate their competencies in civics. Additionally, I just want to add that the State Board of Education is also looking into incorporating civic engagement into the college and career indicators. So as far as establishing our TK through 12 pathway, the intent of AB 24 is really building of citizens throughout transitional kindergarten or pre-K up through 12th grade. It is encouraging that active participation from our students in addition to their demonstration of knowledge. The plan is an alignment from elementary school all the way up through their senior year in high school. And it really avoids the establishment of a one-time test to show their civic knowledge. The committee took the following considerations into account when developing Modesto City Schools pathway, and we really wanted to put structures in place that support the building of citizens throughout our system. So who is eligible? Any pupil in any public school is eligible, as well as any direct funded charter schools, students in the juvenile justice system, as well as students enrolled in alternative school settings. Local education agencies may develop local means of recognizing our younger students who are on the pathway for acquiring the state seal of civic engagement. This pathway is directly aligned with Modesto City Schools Goal 1, increasing academic achievement and ensuring equitable access to enable all students to attain college and career readiness. Specifically 1.1, 1.2, and 1.5. So how does a student earn that state seal of civic engagement? Well, first of all, there are 5 criteria to earn the state seal of civic engagement. And criteria 1 is that students are engaged in academic work in a productive way. Criteria 2 is that they must demonstrate a competent understanding of United States and California constitutions, the functions of governance, the role of citizens in a democracy, as well as democratic principles. Criteria 3 is actually their participation in one or more civic engagement projects that addresses real-world problems. Criteria 4 is really about their self-reflection on their participation in these activities and how it impacted their community as a whole. And criteria 5 is that they exhibit character traits that reflect civic mindedness and a commitment to positively impact their school and their community. And Modesto City Schools has been committed to teaching and acknowledging character traits for over 20 years. This pathway will continue to support and emphasize the importance of character traits that positively impact our community. So in order to create this pathway, we engaged with our stakeholders. So all of our history, social science teachers in grades 7 through 12 were invited to attend voluntary meetings. Those meetings began in November. We met in November, December, January, and February. And then some additional teachers were invited back in March to really hone in and discuss that criteria too with greater input. We shared this information at our teaching and learning meetings to discuss the overall systemic implementations of this pathway. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the work of Modesto City Schools History and Social Science Coordinator, Janine Zambo. She has been a champion for the State Seal of Civic Engagement from the beginning. Her efforts to educate staff and community on this incredible opportunity, as well as collaboratively shape Modesto City Schools pathways, deserves a little special recognition. Her passion and commitment to the State Seal of Civic Engagement has led to Modesto City Schools as being the only district in our county to join a small group of other early adopters throughout the state. By collaboratively developing common expectations at each grade span of how our students will demonstrate their understanding really supports the emphasis that the school board and Dr. Noguchi have placed on creating equity throughout the district. So what does it look like? The committee of teachers, we really began looking at our current curriculum in grades 7 through 12, and what do we already have in place that students, for students to earn that state seal of civic engagement? So criteria 1, as we mentioned earlier, is that students will be engaged in academic work in a productive way. And the committee really decided that what that would look like is our students would have an overall GPA, grade point average, of 2.0 or higher in their history, social science courses in grades 7 through 12. Criteria 2 is that they would demonstrate an understanding of United States, and California constitutions, functions of government, and their roles of citizens. And again, keeping in mind that we don't want one test to show or demonstrate their proficiency, we decided that at each grade level there would be activities that students would be involved in. Teachers would grade with a common rubric, and you can see some of those ideas up there, one of them being the current 8th grade Constitution test. Criteria 3 is that our students would participate in one or more informed civic engagement projects that address real-world problems. And again, looking what we already have in place, we have Love Modesto, which I believe Modesto City Schools has been involved with from its inception. We have many of our students that participate in community service organizations. They may volunteer with state, local, or local governments. We have Modesto High's IB students already have their CAS project, which is aligned with the State Seal of Civic Engagement, and those students that are involved with their specific faith organizations. Criteria 4, as I mentioned earlier, is really about their self-reflection. So the idea that, okay, I participated in these civic events. How did my participation impact the community as a whole? What kind of impact did I have on this real-world problem? They would demonstrate that through submission of an essay, could be up no more than 2 pages, that they will submit with their application for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. And then ultimately, criteria 5 is that they're exhibiting the character traits that reflect civic mindedness and a commitment to positively impact the classroom, the school, and the community as a whole. Looking at what we already have in place, again, we have many of our students receive awards or participate in several of those opportunities up there, one of them being the Character Trait Awards. We have students that are on leadership teams, participate in FFA, community service clubs, our BSUs, our school board representatives, as well as those students that serve on our LCAP stakeholders group. So again, this is really exciting news that so much of this work is in line with what Modesto City Schools has been doing related to character traits, community involvement, and enrichment opportunities. So our next steps is obviously it would be informing staff and students, and as well as community members, of the criteria for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. We would like to meet with our feeder districts and community partners to share information and develop deeper partnerships with them related to the State Seal of Civic Engagement. The understanding that this is a dynamic pathway and it'll continue to evolve as the pathway is developed. So to help with that work, we would like to develop a civic engagement committee that will meet quarterly to review, revise, and expand that pathway to the elementary grades, as well as develop additional opportunities for students to demonstrate their civic engagement. And ultimately, I will be returning next month and asking for your approval for our State Seal of Civic Engagement. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. We're going to start off by, I see lights already, but we're going to start off with opening up questions to the public. Ms. Chamber and Ms. Newton, are there any questions on this item from the public? None?
No, we did not have any submitted.
Great, thank you very much. If so, we're moving on to questions from board members. And I saw Trustee Irvin, Trustee Maestas, Trustee Brown, and then Trustee Marks. So let's start with Trustee Irvin.
Yes, I think this is a great move for the district to move in the direction of for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. I wanted to know how will all of this be tracked, for students that participate and teachers and all of that good stuff. And that's basically it. How will it all be tracked?
That's a great question. We work very closely with our assessment and evaluation department. And so much like we do for the state seal of biliteracy, they kind of help us develop. So they pull all the data, the mass data for us. Don't ask me how, but they do pull that data for us. And then we get a list of students that meet the initial criteria. So we would get a list of students who meet criteria 1 and 2 because that is available for all students. We would then notify high school counselors as well as principals of the students on that list so that they can reach out to those students, again, encouraging them to complete their application. In the student's application, that's where they would fill out their information for criteria 3, 4, and 5.
Great. Trustee Maestas?
Thank you, and thanks for all the hard work on this. This is amazing and great. I have like 2.5 questions.
All right.
If that'll work. My first question has to do with criteria 5. The awards or participation in, and there's a little list here. Is there going to be a bit more of a detailed list so that it's not like, I mean, if a student is, let's say, the president of the art club, does that count, or does they have to be the president of Future Business Associates of America, something like that?
I think we're just really looking for them to show those leadership roles and demonstrating that they are exhibiting good character. So yet we just put a list, and I didn't even have all of them on this slide presentation, but there will be another line that says other, that the students can write in any other opportunities or clubs that they belong to.
Perfect. Okay, and then my 2.5 question is students that come in from other districts, mid, like let's say they come in 11th grade, or when this starts, that's my half question, when this starts. How can they show criteria 2 if, let's say, they didn't come to 8th grade here, didn't take the Constitution test or the First Amendment project? What ways can students fulfill those requirements?
Right, and so we're not looking at for students to pass all of those requirements, knowing that especially our high schools do receive students throughout their tenure as high school students. So we're looking at like a 70% mastery. We would look at maybe during their term with us. The last assessment there is a senior level course that hopefully if they come to us later and that's when they would receive their state seal of civic engagement or be eligible for it, they would at least have that opportunity to pass that last assessment. Or I don't want to say assessment because some of them are in class, like their activities that the students are working on or projects within the classroom.
Thank you. Trustee Brown?
So my question has to do with the timing of this recognition. Realizing that we won't pass this until possibly the April board meeting, we've got some amazing students that are graduating this year who have not been able to get recognized for so many of the things that they've been done. Is there any way that we can create a fast track for some of those students who would have already qualified and give them this seal this year?
I will do whatever I am asked to do. I believe, Trustee Brown, that we were looking to start the state seal next school year. But if as a board we are asked to get things rolling a little bit sooner than that, we absolutely will look into it.
All right. Thank you.
So we kind of as a process, we always do 2 board meetings. We do the report and then we go back and do the approval. Certainly, if the board wishes to approve this tonight, we can do that. That's certainly your prerogative. That's something that can be brought up later if that's something that you choose to do when you choose to make the motion.
Trustee Marks?
So I had a couple of questions. So the location, is this going to be at all the high schools? And so we'll have a class devoted to the civic education or
So it won't necessarily be one particular class.
Right.
We are looking at embedding the civic education throughout all of the students' courses in grades 7 through 12, and then eventually developing that pathway at our elementary levels. So it's not just one class or one assessment, it's kind of a compilation or a portfolio in a sense of their civic engagement throughout their term with us.
Okay, okay, that's great. So, and then I had a comment. Is this okay to make comment? Is,
I see that, Trustee Mejia, did you have a question?
No, I just have a comment. The comment is, are we flexible to incorporate more things as we learn through this process? I think it's important that we kind of revise it, and then as we engage younger students, I think it's the best idea ever to engage them at a very young age, because I think it'll just create long-abiding citizens over the course of their lives. So that was just my comment, that we're flexible to be revising as we learn stuff.
Yeah, and I would say most definitely, especially being an early adopter, we know that, we're putting together the structures for the state seal of civic engagement. And as we learn and grow, we would definitely want to continue. And that's part of the work of that committee, the Civic Engagement Committee will do as they meet quarterly, is review and revise what we have in place. So absolutely.
Thanks. Trustee March, you had a comment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I'm super excited about this. I know this is something that we've been looking at for many years, and just to see, we had a First Amendment school that was honored nationally, Fairview Elementary School. So cool. I don't know if you know Rob Williams, but he was the principal there, and they worked so hard so they ran the school like you were a little mini government, and they elected their representatives in each class. They would have their assembly meetings, and then they would determine what they needed changed at the school, and their representatives were their representatives. So the students would come to them and tell them what we want to do. It was so amazing. I loved just hearing the students talk about it, and seeing the principal. He got so excited about it. They changed the names of all the sidewalks there to fit with like Constitution Avenue, and so it was just so great to see the students. And then to be nationally recognized was even a great thing as a First Amendment school, which was pretty incredible for Modesto City Schools to have that honor. But so I'm looking forward to seeing how this will go through, having served on a statewide committee that was promoting civic education that Sandra Day O'Connor had pushed. It just made my heart go, oh, I'm super happy that we're doing this, because I know our students will benefit, and to have that knowledge, and as they go through school, and as Trustee Mejia said, be able to learn how government works and to be able to participate in it in that way. So at Fairview, I know the parents at Fairview decided that they wanted to get involved because they heard all their kids talking about how they could change things and that they had a voice. So I just remember at that time, we didn't have a fence around the front of the school, and there's that, Whitmore is a really busy street. And so I remember the parents coming together and saying, who can we talk to and how can we have a voice in this? And we've written up a petition. We understand what the First Amendment is, so can we come and do this? And so they actually they asked to have a fence put around the school, and we were actually able to do that. So it was really great. But I loved seeing how the empowerment that you have once you learn how to go through a process and know the right way to approach the people that can make a difference. And so that was really helpful. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to our students being able to have access to the seal. So next meeting, I guess we'll be able to do that.
Thank you. Trustee Mejia, did you have a comment?
Dr. Noguchi, you said we could move forward and approve it this meeting. Is that would that be in it? Will we add it? Will we be able to add it to a different right now, or be? I don't know the process. So.
That's your prerogative.
I was just about to mention that if anyone wanted to turn this report into a motion.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I'm glad I looked at Cindy, because Cindy has definitely been doing this much longer than I have. We have it on the agenda as a report, so because we've communicated to the community that it is a report, that we will have to wait until have it as an action item at the next board meeting. So I apologize for that.
Great. So if that's the case, you were going to ask to make it a motion, right? Correct, Mr. Trustee Brown? Great. So can I just add, since we will be waiting till the next board meeting, if it's not too much to ask, if we can take up what Trustee Brown had mentioned about finding out a way to incorporate for students this year, see if they can possibly be awarded this seal, right? So we can have maybe something outlined for them as well.
We will definitely look into that, and I will get back to you at
Yep.
the next board meeting or in a board
Yeah,
communication.
board communication.
Real quick, Trustee Brown?
I just think it would be amazing if we could be the first district in the state to award the seal. We've got the students who should qualify, and let's recognize them. Thank you.
We definitely do. Thank you so much, Ms. Newton, and stay with us because we have you for a couple of them. So we'll be moving, this was only a report, so we'll be moving on to, let me find my, we'll be moving on to B4, approval of the first reading of the proposed revision of Board Policy BP 528, junior high, middle school graduation ceremonies, and AR 5128, which the same name, and this also is Ms. Newton.
So
Miss-
before Ms. Newton starts, I just wanted to frame just some a few logistics for the board. So the board is reminded during board governance training, the board's purview is board policy. So you are going to look at board policy, where you are going to give us recommendations to change board policy, and then we will bring it back in consent at the next board meeting. That's the what. You guys have control and influence over what? Staff, myself, have influence over how we implement what you all have asked. So rather than going through ARs and wordsmithing ARs, what we will do as staff is we will align the ARs to be parallel with what you decide in the board policies. And the reason why I share this is we are moving forward with looking at about 50 board policies between now and July 1st. And so if we focus on board policies and let staff then align the ARs, we'll have half the amount of wordsmithing and half the amount of work to do. So I know Trustee Marks pulled the ARs, which we could have done either way, but we're just going to kind of put a pin in the ARs. We will come back and revise, and you'll see the revisions to the ARs based on what your recommendation is moving forward with the board policies. Does that make sense? We're good with that? Okay, thank you.
So we will not be voting on ARs today.
No, we won't be, it's just it's just the first read, and then we'll bring them back in consent at the next board meeting and align it to whatever your guidance is on the board policies.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Newton?
All right. Well, Vice President Lopez, trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, and Cabinet, in an effort to ensure our board policies are up to date and provide an equitable learning environment for all students, a board policy as well as an AR administrative regulation revision is being brought for your consideration this evening. Board Policy 5128 provides direction on junior high or middle school graduation ceremonies. There are really ultimately two recommended revisions to this policy. Currently, Board Policy 5128 specifically requires that in order to participate in graduation ceremonies, a student must receive a passing grade on the district's 8th grade United States Constitution test. After reviewing data, the district has identified a disproportionate percentage of some students groups, such as English learners, African American students, as well as economically disadvantaged students, do not pass the Constitution test and are therefore excluded from participating in graduation ceremonies. The United States Constitution test will continue to be administered. The recommended revision simply removes the requirement to pass the assessment to be eligible to participate in graduation ceremonies. The second revision to the board policy is a recommendation to change the term graduation to promotion. This aligns with Modesto City Schools Board Policy 5123 on promotion, acceleration, and retention. A quick survey of 8 surrounding districts' board policies found that Modesto City Schools is the only district to refer to junior high middle school graduation. 4 districts refer to only promotion for junior high middle school students, and 4 districts use both terms, graduation and promotion, for junior high. It is recommended that the board approve this first reading of Board Policy 5128, and I am available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. We'll start off again with checking in with our public. Ms. Chambers and Ms. Newton, is there any comments from our public?
None. speaking for Miss Noonan.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, I'm gonna open up for questions from the board. I have Trustee Irvin, and we'll start with Trustee Irvin.
Yes, I'm glad we're editing the policy to say promotion rather than graduation from the middle school, and also taking out the passing grade on the district's constitution test. Although I do agree that having a constitution test for middle school students, but I don't think it should be a requirement for their promotion, so to speak, or graduation from junior high to walk the stage after completing everything else but the constitution test, which is only a requirement within our district, you know. And also being a recipient of a lot of the kids that didn't get a chance to walk across the stage when I used to coordinate the NAACP's graduation recognition. We used to get a lot of the middle school students so they could walk the stage for their families, participate in that graduation from all walks of life. And so I just think that, you know, we should be promoting them based on their performance in the academics that are requirements versus just, you know, okay, the constitution test is the make it or break it of you walking across the stage with your peers, you know. But it is good information to know and have for students to know about the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So I like that information that they get, mm-hmm. but as a requirement, I don't agree with. So I'm glad we're moving in that direction.
Thank you, Trustee Irvin. Yeah, I would have to agree. I definitely believe it's important for our students to know that, and definitely it should be an important test that they take in their 8th grade year in their U.S. history class. But I definitely don't think that it should be a requirement for graduation. It should be part of their grade for their U.S. history class. Trustee Marks?
Thank you. So I'm probably the one who feels the strongest about this because I remember being in many meetings with other districts around the United States, and that we were one of the few that had the U.S. Constitution as a requirement for graduation, and they were like, wow, that is so awesome. They were so impressed with that. They wanted to get that in their schools because they felt that it was so important to understand government so you could participate in government and do a good job in it. I do know that I've received calls over the years from parents who were upset that their child didn't pass the Constitution test. And so, but then I found out that they had 5 opportunities to pass the Constitution test. So I asked the parent, did their child take advantage of the extra work that they could do to get to pass the test? And this particular parent, she said no, her daughter did not. And so I said, well, this is a hard lesson to learn this year, but I know she won't do it again. So she agreed with that, but it was a hard thing. And I know that this has been something that I've been very proud of as a district, that we made this something that we wanted our students to understand, to be able to be citizens, to work in the environment of being a citizen and how to participate. So I felt very strongly about that. But I also understand I don't want to keep a child from graduating or promoting them to the next grade level. So my second point is I like the word graduation because to me it gave it you have completed something. You've made it to this. And I know some students, they called it graduation and they were so happy to get a certificate of graduation in 8th grade because for some of them that was a huge milestone. And promotion, I just felt like it diluted what it meant to make it all the way through 8th grade and complete all of the tasks and all of the work to get to that point. So those are my 2 points. I still want to keep the word graduation, even though I know that we're promoting them, but I still believe that it's a graduate. They have graduated on to another season or into another era of their life, into the high school. And then I had the viewpoint of keeping the Constitution test as a constitution test. Now, I could see taking out the English language learners. That would be really difficult. I would make an exception for English language learners. I was not aware that economically disadvantaged students and African Americans had a hard time graduating or passing the test. So I had not heard that. I had not had a parent call me that that was a struggle. So do we know how many students did not pass 8th grade last year because it did not pass the Constitution test? Well, not last year. Let's go the year before, because last year was unusual. So let's go to 2019. Do we know? Do we have any numbers on that? Or can we
I
find
have
them?
current numbers. I believe Dr. Odell has last year's numbers. I don't
Awesome.
believe we have 2018 numbers.
Okay, that's great.
So we don't have 2020 because of
Right.
COVID.
Yes.
We do have spring of 2019. I have
Okay.
it right here. The disparity was we had about 6% of English learners versus their population. So we have
Okay.
35%, this was in 2019, 8th graders only that took the test. There was 35% of those students were English learners.
Okay.
41% of those that didn't pass were English learners. So that's the disparity number. Those of Hispanic origin, Latinx, 72% made up the 8th graders that took the test, yet 82% of those who didn't pass the test were Latinx. Conversely, students that are Caucasian white in 2019, they made up 13% of the population, yet only 9% of them didn't pass. So it's a converse number you can see there.
Right.
So those are the numbers I have right now in front of me that I received from our data and assessment team.
So they didn't pass the first time, or they didn't pass the 5th time that they took it? So
They had not passed.
Okay, all right. And so you don't have any number, there were, let's say we had 2,000 students that graduated from junior high or from 8th grade, and then we had, well, it won't be 2,000, it'll be probably 1,000.
We had 1,661 students who took the test.
Okay. And then, so how many didn't pass?
So I'll have to do the numbers for you
Okay, I was
quickly.
just wondering, because I
Right.
know the percentage is that's good, but I'm like, okay, so 13%, 9%, so out of 100 students, that would be 9. So, okay, so I was just trying to figure out how many, so that meant they could not graduate from high school, correct?
That means
I mean,
that they
junior
were
high.
not allowed to walk the stage during the
Yes.
graduation.
Okay.
I did ask those that were site administrators at that time, did that occur at your site? And 100% of the sites, that occurred at their site.
Okay.
So all
they
of them
did-
had an instance where that occurred.
Yes, right, okay. Well, thank you. That's good information.
Do we know if they are actually given 5 opportunities to take this?
They are given multiple opportunities to pass the Constitution test because it holds a lot of weight right now. Their participation in those graduation ceremonies. I could also add to that the Constitution education is a state mandate in grades 5, 8, 11, and 12. So our students do have, multiple years that they are receiving that education on our U.S. Constitution.
Thank you. I had Trustee Irwin, and then I'll come back to you, Trustee Brown.
I just wanted to point out from my experience in my short stint teaching here in this district that with other teachers I found myself and others found ourselves basically setting aside more, I'm not going to say more important work, but the core of the academic day, trying to prepare for this Constitution test, and especially when you're at a school like Henshaw, where you want your students to walk across that stage, and this is the only thing that possibly can be holding them back when they've all met all the other requirements. You find yourself negating the rest of the work that could basically impact their grades overall, trying to get them to pass the Constitution test. And I found myself, divide, I keep focusing, because I know that's the goal for them to walk across that stage, for them and their families to see them promote from 8th grade. And so you find a lot of teachers doing the same thing. It's like, hey, we got, especially when you come in from a school like Hanshaw, West Side, where that's not, looked upon as, it's like, okay, I did everything I could. I passed all my classes. And now they're saying I can't walk because I couldn't pass or didn't pass the Constitution because I was so focused on everything else. So what I'm getting at is like, man, how? Why? And like I said, a lot of teachers set aside, instructional time to focus on the Constitution test.
Thank you, Trustee Irvin. I have Trustee Brown, and then I'll be coming to President West.
So I think it's interesting to hear the passion from both sides on this issue. And I look back at what we just talked about with this seal of civic engagement and how we're going to be working with students from TK through 12th grade to help them prepare for this ability to become productive citizens and understand how that fits into government. I think that if we take that emphasis away and allow our students to focus on their education and learn what they can, but not have that pass-fail system for for promotion. And with regard to the word graduation, I think that we need to put every bit of emphasis that we possibly can on high school and a true graduation. Graduation means a completion of education, and there was a time here in the Valley where 8th grade was a completion for some students, and it was appropriate to use the word graduation. When I came here from the Bay Area and saw the emphasis that was placed on an 8th grade graduation, I was shocked. And I've never felt that it was necessary to hold a ceremony, because that ceremony we should be focusing on is one with the cap and gown, where you throw the cap and you finish and you move on with your life. And some people finish their education with that graduation, and some see that as a stepping point on to further education. But I like the word promotion because it feels to me like it tells them that they're moving on, not that they're finished.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. President West?
Thank you. I think it's important to understand the concepts that are in the Constitution test, but I question the value of memorizing a lot of facts and information, taking a test, and as I found with a lot of the students I've worked with, they promptly forget that information. I think there might be a better way for our students to really truly understand the Constitution. I'm going to kind of put our student representative on the spot for a minute. And do you remember back to 8th grade, Carson? And do you feel there was more for value, or how did you view it as a student at 8th grade? Do you remember?
There was definitely a big emphasis on the Constitution test. I remember we spent multiple weeks on it, and to tell you the truth, right now I don't know how much information I could recall from that Constitution test, but I do think it was valuable to go over that information, because a quick glance at a spreadsheet, I'd probably be able to recall the information from 8th grade. And I definitely think it's important that students understand the Constitution, but like many of the other board members mentioned, I don't think it should be held over students and be the final factor that would not allow them to cross the stage.
And as far as the promotion versus graduation, I agree with Trustee Brown. I prefer the term promotion to graduation for 8th graders.
Thank you to both. Is there any other comments or questions for Ms. Newton? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of the proposed revision to Board Policy VP 5128, junior high, middle school graduation ceremonies? We get a moved by trustee Mejia. Do I have a second? Seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's, just want to, 6 ayes. Any, all those in favor, all those opposed, raise your hand and say nay.
Nay?
And then 1. Motion carries 6 to 1. Okay, now we'll be moving on to B5, which is also Ms. Newton. Approval of the first reading of proposed revision of Board Policy BP 6146.5, junior high, middle school graduation requirement, standards of proficiency. Ms. Newton?
Thank you, Vice President Lopez, trustees, and Dr. Noguchi. Again, in an effort to ensure our board policies are up to date and provide equitable learning environments for all students, the next board policy and administrative regulation revision is being brought for your consideration this evening. Board Policy 6146.5 creates a framework for junior high, middle school graduation requirements. This policy has been revised to align with gamut language, and similar to the last board policy 5128, we are recommending eliminating the passing of the U.S. Constitution test as a proficiency requirement to receive a diploma from junior high school. Additionally, the revision recommends changing the term graduation to promotion. These recommended revisions align with Modesto City Schools Board Policy 5123, Promotion, Acceleration, and Retention. To be promoted, students in grades 7 and 8 must demonstrate proficiency in reading, English language arts, and mathematics, and successfully complete the core course of study, which is English, math, science, and social science. They may not receive 3 or more Fs on any semester grade in math, language arts, social science, or science. The board policy continues to authorize an IEP team to determine appropriate differential proficiency standards for students with individualized education plans. It is recommended that the board approve the first reading of BP 6146.5. And again, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Newton. Ms. Chambers, any comments from the public? No. Thank you. Ms. Newton, is there any comments to read from the public
No.
via email?
No, there were no comments submitted.
Thank you very much. Opening it up for board members, I see trustee Irvin. Then
I just wanted to just point out, because as I was reading it, I noticed that graduation hadn't been drawn through in something like a letter C, VP 6.
Does he have his?
46.5.
Trustee Irvin, do you have your mic on?
Differential graduation course. And then on then E down there, when it addresses the exceptional students needs to meet the regular graduation standards to the extent to that their disabilities permit.
Trustee Irvin, thank you. I see that we missed graduation on E. Can you repeat the first one you said, please? I couldn't quite hear where you were
The
at.
first one is C on 6146.5C, where it says junior high, middle school differential.
Got it in the middle of the page. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Trustee Marks?
Thank you. I had a question on B, the letter B, on right at the right after the graduation course requirements, then it says pass required, and it's lined out. So when you said, and so now it only is saying that they just need to complete the course. They don't need to pass it. So could you let me know, you said they couldn't have more than 3 Fs in certain classes. Was that, did I hear
In
you
the core classes, which these classes, the courses that are listed here are considered core classes for our 7th and 8th grade students, Trustee Marks. What I was quoting was Board Policy 5123, which is in regards to promotion, acceleration, and retention. And that is where it delineates specifically that they may have no more than 3 Fs on their semester grades in any one of those courses. And all of our junior highs offer extended summer school and summer school options for students to make up their grades so that they ensure they're passing those courses and then are promoted on to the high schools.
So, and the core classes were English, math, science?
And social science.
And social science. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of the proposed revision of Board Policy VP 6146.5, junior high, middle school graduation
Yes, sure.
requirements and standard of proficiency? She
She wants to make a motion.
Okay.
And there's-
It was moved by President West. Do I hear a second?
I second.
And then I have a comment before we vote.
And seconded by Trustee Maestas. Trustee Marks, you had a comment?
Yes. So I have strong feelings also about the pass required, that should stay as something that I believe is important for our students to pass these classes in order to know that it's valuable and that they need to do that to, but I also anyway, so that's where I stand on that. So I'm going to vote no on this as well because I really believe that students should pass these classes to be able to be proficient in the next level of their education so that they can be successful. And so if that means they need to go to summer school, then that's what I think that they should be able to do. And so that they can pass those courses. So I'm going to vote no.
Trustee Irving, you had a comment?
Oh, so I was just trying to
Is your mic on?
piggyback on Trustee Marks, because I guess I missed that. So what we're saying is that the students don't have to pass those core courses. They can just, literally, if they failed all those courses, they would still promote.
If you look right above the listed course of study, it does say, so I'm on I, successful completion of the prescribed course of study. So the word was just redundant. That's why we had it striked, because right above it, it says you must have successful completion of the prescribed course of study, and then it lists those courses. So we are not saying just take the courses.
Oh, okay.
It is clearly said they must successful.
Okay.
Okay, so let me understand that. I just want to make sure I understand that. So when you say successful, could you tell me what that means?
That would mean not failing the course.
So tell me what the difference is between that and passing. I'm just trying to understand the verbiage, because if I'm a parent and I'm reading this as a parent and my child comes to me and they said, "Hey Mom, I looked at this, I read through our book, and here's what it says. It says I complete the courses, and it says successful completion of them. So if I'm in class, I'm doing the work, but I didn't pass it, I still completed the course by the end of the year, as long as I didn't get 3 Fs on the semester grade in those particular ones." Is that correct?
Right.
I'm taking the child's viewpoint, and I'm trying to find a way around this rule. What can I do to get around this? So, because I raised 3 kids, I know what they were like. So, and they would look up stuff, and they wanted to know what the rules were. So, that's what I want to know. So we're clear to the parents, so that they understand what successful means.
Barely
Ms.
passing
Odell.
would be, right? barely passing, if they got D's, all 4 D's, that's barely passing, but they still pass, right?
Would that be a question that would be addressed in the AR? Or would that something that would? As a VP?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're using an A through F grade scale, passing, in a very technical sense, is A, B, C, and D. A fail F is not passing.
Representative Carranza?
I'd have to agree with Trustee Marks. I think that the wording, it is, although it says successful completion, it'd be best to leave out all ambiguity and have the word pass or fail in this portion of the board policy.
I'm happy to make that change. I just want to refer you back to Board Policy 5123 that says that in order to be promoted, they can have no more than 3 Fs on a semester grade in any one of those areas. Sorry, I didn't finish my statement.
So that's only because I don't have it in front of me to understand what you're saying. It's difficult for me to base this one on that policy. So, because I agree with you, if we see that and that's how it's written, then how can we, because we did that one.
January of 2020.
Okay, and then this one was 2010 when this one was last revised, or? Okay,
I can read it to you if you'd like. Trustee Marks, I have the wording in front of me.
Okay, all right.
Board Policy 5123 on promotion, acceleration, and retention states that students in grades 7 and 8 are identified for possible retention if they do not demonstrate proficiency in reading, English language arts, and math. They may be retained if they receive 3 or more Fs on any semester grade in the following subjects: English language arts, math, science, or social science.
So is it because we're using the word may? Is that where the discrepancy is? That they may be retained? Is that why we're saying, or is that why we're taking out pass?
I think we use the term may just because the research on retention is not very positive, so it kind of gives us some options.
Okay.
We have a question from Trustee Maestas.
So I like the wording successful completion. And let me just kind of give you my kind of perspective. Depending upon how a student shows proficiency in a course may not necessarily go with an A through F scale. A kid can have successful completion showing for proficiency. I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying we're going to go this way in any way, but our K6 grades are standards based, so their report cards give you 1, 2, 3s. If in some time a junior high decides to give a standards-based score, then you can't just say pass-fail. This is based on proficiency of understanding standards. So now we really want to look at successful completion of a course as opposed to a pass-fail. So I feel like this wording gives us a lot more flexibility in really looking at the child, and as they progress through their courses. The other thing is to think about, back to what Trustee Brown was saying, on students being promoted into high school where that work. I'm not going to say that the 7-8 doesn't matter, because all the education matters. But as we look into the future, successful completion of high school is what's going to take our kids to being successful throughout life. And so all the education they get is going to help them be successful. But I think that as we get our kids to high school, and as they in 9th grade get a better understanding, as the teachers get a better understanding of what the students know from 8th grade, then we have a better opportunity to have all our students be successful and get through high school successfully, which is really what we want to do. We want to make sure that they all get to high school and beyond. So I like the wording. I kind of actually like the and meeting standards of proficiency. 'Cause I kind of like that little wording there too. I'm not gonna talk about that too much. But I guess I'm just on the other side of the issue here. I'd like to see that stay.
Okay, so here, so may I ask the motion person, who made the motion on this?
It was President West.
Okay, President West, I just have a, well, actually I have to ask you all to see what you think. But to take what you said about successful completion and taking the past required out, but putting successful completion of core courses, I believe then you have it isn't just completing it, it means you have to be successful at it. And then keeping and meeting the standards of proficiency, keeping that instead of lining that out. Now, I don't know if that's a problem with what where we're going with our, whatever we're revising or why we took that out. But I agree with Mr. Maestas that could stay. So if the person who made the motion, which is President West, so I'm just asking for an amendment to your motion because the motion was as is. So the amendment would be to change the motion, and this person who seconded it would have to agree to it, and that's Mr. Maestas. So,
Yeah.
Oh,
no, it was
Mejia.
Maestas. It was Maestas.
okay, all right, just making sure I heard the right person. Okay, so to just restate it, it's to take, in that first paragraph under I, is to take and meeting the standards of proficiency, keeping that statement there, and then adding right below it, successful just before the word completion of core courses. To me, that gives it a little more oomph, and hopefully the students will believe that, yes, they have to work hard at summer school to do well and successfully complete it.
Is there any rebuttal to that? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you read it.
I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify with Trustee Marks, because I can't see what you're looking at, and so the standards of proficiency were lined out, and you're asking that they come back.
Yes.
So my question is, I guess to our cabinet there, standards of proficiency. I know back in the day when I worked for another district, we had proficiency tests, and the students were required to pass those proficiency tests to be promoted or graduated from 8th grade. And so is it still relevant that we say proficiency? Do we still offer those? Or why were they lined out in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So going back to Board Policy 5123, the standards of proficiency used to align with proficiency examinations. The way that board policy is worded now says students will demonstrate proficiency in reading, English language arts, and math. I think we can leave it in there. If that makes everybody feel more comfortable, I think it's fine.
Okay. All right.
I'm comfortable with that then. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So
So
I would like to make a motion that
Actually,
we approve.
You don't need to take the motion. You just need to accept accept my amendment, and then Trustee Maestas has to accept it as well.
Then I will accept Trustee Mark's amendment to leave proficiency in.
I second and accept that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
okay.
Just so I'm clear, I want to make sure that we've got the right language, so.
That's what I
Trustee
was-
Mark, go ahead.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask Trustee Marks to read it, how it would come, how it would be worded, and then have Trustee West motion to approve with the additions,
amendments,
with
yeah.
the
Okay,
amendments.
with the amendments. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so it is, so it's that right under I, it starts with the word students. And so that you can hear as well, Trustee West, students shall receive diplomas on graduation from junior high, middle school only after successful completion of the prescribed course of study. And then this is what we're adding back in. And meeting the standards of proficiency established by the district. So that's the whole statement. And then we're adding in successful before the word completion of core courses. On the title, it's a title of a list just before it gives the list of the classes.
Yes, I would like to move what Trustee Marks just read.
Did I get that correctly? We put the word graduation back?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
Putting back the word graduation if we
It'd
already
be
had.
promotion.
Oh, we're taking out, yes, we took out graduation.
Should be promotion.
Oh, right, diploma, it does say graduate, yes, and Mr.
Wanted to make sure that
Irvin,
we're aligned.
Mr. Irvin made that
Yeah.
suggestion. I don't think there was anyone that disagreed with your, with what Mr. Irvin said.
Thank you.
So, do I have a motion to approve the VP with the edits?
Yes, I move that we approve it with the edits.
So I have a motion by President West. Do I have a second?
I second with the edits.
Thank you, Trustee Maestas. Now, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Raise your hand and say nay. None. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Now we'll be moving on to, I want to get a temperature read. Do people feel like we need a break, or should we continue on? Let's go. I'm saying let's go.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I can do it, yeah.
Great. Okay, we can move on to B6, report on bond program update to the board. That is Mr. Serling. Thank you, Ms. Nguyen, so much for everything.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. Good evening, trustees. This will be somewhat of a follow-up from the March 1st board workshop on facility improvement projects. And we will be discussing the elementary bond issuance schedule, which includes a Series B or our second bond issuance for measures D and E, our next elementary bond measure, and future high school bond measure consideration. Joining us tonight virtually is Kathy Domenico. She's our financial advisor with Capital Public Finance Group for measures D and E. And she will be here to answer any questions you have about the proposed bond issuance schedule. So you've seen this slide before, and I just want to highlight that again, that the first time the board members saw this with the passage of measures D and E, we had anticipated about a 7-year bond issuance schedule. And so we are very pleased to reduce it to 3 years, and all the bonds will be issued by the year 2023, as is referenced in this slide. There's various aspects that have worked in our favor to accelerate our bond issuance schedule. One of those is a very favorable low interest rate environment, and also the assessed value has not decreased. It has actually increased slightly, our assessed value of our homeowners in the boundaries of Modesto City Elementary School District. So this is not, we're not rushing to complete the projects of measures D and E. We've been fortunate that through the board's leadership and direction, we've identified 8 priority school sites that will be targeted with Series B and Series C of measures D and E. So it's very targeted now, and we have a very favorable construction environment that is allowing us to escalate our time schedule here. So our second bond issuance is, as we're calling it, or Series B, is scheduled to be about $60 million of projects over the next 2 years. And this will allow us to continue with our planned bond construction program. And they will be issued in May, and the board will be asked to approve this particular series at the next board meeting on April 19th. The documents that will be associated with this, the board will see. For those of you that were part of the first series, these are things you will see on the next agenda. A preliminary official statement, a bond purchase agreement, a paying agent agreement, and a continuing disclosure certificate. So there will be some lengthy items on the next board agenda for your approval. Just making you aware of it ahead of time when you see it on April 19th. So April 19th, we'll have board action. There'll actually be a resolution that authorizes the bond issuance and approving the legal documents that you saw on the last slide. We're looking at a May 4th bond sale right now. That's the schedule, is a May 4th bond sale. And then May 25th, we expect a bond closing and the bond proceeds to be received that will allow us to continue moving forward with our summer projects and planning. Measures D&E were never meant to solve all of our elementary K-8 facility needs. We knew we would need several successful bond measures to complete at the time, over $500 million worth of identified needs. And in order to continue to address our elementary schools, right now staff is recommending an election cycle of November 24 to continue the elementary bond program. In order to do that, we would begin planning in August of 22. We would do a public opinion survey of our elementary voters in March of 23, and depending on what that survey showed us, we would ask for board action by June of 24 to call for an election in November of 24. And again, this would allow us to continue past the quick start projects that we've done at every elementary school site, and then the 8 priority sites that we are currently addressing with Series B and Series C issuances of measures D&E. At the time we did the facility needs assessment, there was also one that covered our high schools. And these, as you see on the slides, were the types of needs that were identified in the facility needs analysis. And so for those of you that have been on the board are familiar with the big book that it's been called, and it really identifies the facility needs of each one of our school sites. And you can see the different areas on this slide of needs that were identified. Just want to point out that the facility needs assessment identified needs of our facilities at that point in time. It did not recommend any new facilities. It recommended what we needed to do with our current facilities at our 9-12 school sites. December 2017, the board held a workshop for the board in which we identified needs, board priorities for both the elementary and the high school. The needs identified for the elementary drove measures D&E, and then these are the needs that were identified by the board at the time for our high school. And many of them don't vary from the previous slide in the facility needs analysis, but you'll note that this does recognize new buildings. We have theaters, we have stadiums, cafeterias. So it's not just how can we renovate our existing facilities, but what would our needs be at our high schools for future facilities or additional facilities. Based on this and based on the success of our current elementary bond program through measures D&E, staff is recommending an election cycle for a potential high school bond measure of November of 22. That would require board action by June 30th of 22 to call for an election, so that's a little over a year from now. We would do a feasibility assessment similar to what we did with the elementary district that really determines our bonding capacity for the high school, which will be different than the elementary district. And also completion of a public opinion survey. So that would tell us what's the appetite of our voters for the high school district to support a bond measure for facility improvements or not. And we would obviously recommend TBWB Strategies, which knows our community, it knows our district. They did a very successful public outreach for the elementary program for measures D&E. And we would be recommending to utilize TBWB Strategies for a future public opinion survey. Next steps, as previously mentioned, the board will approve the second bond issuance for measures D and E on April 19th at the next board meeting. At a future board meeting, not tonight, we would bring a contract forward with TBWB Strategies to complete a feasibility study. And we're looking at sometime in the mid of this year. We recognize there's a lot going on in our community with COVID-19 response, with the schools right now, with coming back to school, getting through this year. So we're going to determine on what would be the best time to approach our potential voters of the high school district to determine what the voter preference is. But that would be sometime mid this year. You would see a contract on a future board meeting for approval to complete this voter survey. And with that, we are here to answer any questions you may have.
And the only thing that I would add is this wouldn't be in consent, so it's not going to be buried somewhere. So if we choose to bring, when we choose to bring that back, it will be in a forum such that you can respond to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. We would follow the same path we took for measures D and E. It would be on agenda
Hi, my name
for
is
approval.
Thank you, Mr. Surley. I'm going to go out to public. To Ms. Chambers, is there any comment from the public? This report? No. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments to read from emails or voicemails?
No, we did not receive any.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to open it up for questions for Mr. Surley. Let's start off with Trustee Brown.
So I'm going to let you know that I have had conversations with Mr. Zerly in regard to this. I've been deeply involved with bonds in the past. And I promise to support the district and wave the flag again if it's the choice of the board and the district for me to do that. But I am a firm believer in solving the crisis of the billion-dollar book. We owe it to our community to provide the best facilities we possibly can for our students, and I'm going to support that and do everything I can to see if the community supports it. I have, for one, have been leery of accelerating this process. I've been afraid because of the political environment. But it's not my voice, not my fears that we need to be worried about. I think we need to follow the voice of the public, and we really need to go out and see if it's time that the public will support another measure. I do have a couple of questions. With regard to the bond issuance schedule, Mr. Zerly and perhaps our consultant, Kathy, you could answer my question. What happens if sometime between now and 2023 we see an escalation in the interest rates? Is it possible that we're going to be pushing that third series of bonds into perhaps 2024?
Go ahead, Kathy.
I can address that. So we are still using pretty conservative interest rate assumptions for the 2023 issuance. When we originally sized these measures, we used conservative interest rate and we used conservative assessed value growth projections. Both of those have really come out in the district's favor, and it's actually a wonderful situation because not only are you able to issue earlier, but you're issuing a less series, which saves your taxpayers a lot of money. We want to try to be as efficient as possible. So we are not being aggressive in our projections moving forward because we still want to essentially under-promise and over-deliver. We want to make sure that you're able to do what we say we're going to do. So just to answer your question, unless interest rates really spike, and I mean back up above 5 or even 6%, we think we're still going to be able to issue it in 2023. Your assessed value is growing. We're not seeing signs that your assessed value growth is slowing, even as a result of COVID. It's still going. and interest rates are staying low. Although they're coming up a little bit, our assumptions are still, there's still a lot of room underneath our assumptions. So we'll update you if we see any reason to be concerned that we wouldn't be able to issue in 2023. But at this point, we think it's reasonable for you to go ahead and plan your facilities with that timeline in mind.
Okay, another question that I have has to do with bonding capacity. I know that the amount that we were able to include in measures D and E was based on that bonding capacity. So I need to know, does the acceleration of our timeline in any way affect that bonding capacity? And do we have any idea, are we going to be able to go out for a similar amount of money as we did with D&E, or would waiting a while allow us to have a higher bonding capacity?
So there's a couple things that were your constraints. So your legal bonding capacity is actually not your constraint. Your legal bonding capacity is you can have bonds outstanding equal to 1.25% of the total assessed value in your district. And you're not close to that legal bonding capacity. But you are correct, there was a tax rate limitation. So per bond measure, as an elementary district, you are limited to a tax rate of $30 per 100,000 of assessed value. And that was our real limitation, and why we had to do those two bond measures, because each bond measure carries its own independent tax rate limitation. So moving forward, you could do another measure with a similar amount as actually Measure D. Measure D had our $28 per 100,000 estimate. And you could get a similar amount, but because your assessed value's grown, you actually likely could actually issue more bonds than you had authorized under Measure D. So there is going to be some growth in the tax base that you'll be able to take advantage of. But the question of if you wait longer, will you have more bonding capacity? In theory, if you wait, your assessed value will continue to grow, and as a result, your bonding capacity will continue to grow because as the assessed value grows, that tax rate limit buys you a little bit more in dollars. But I don't know that it'll grow substantially in 2 years where it's going to be enough of a difference. I think you're really looking at probably a 10-year window before you can see some substantial room in that tax rate. But again, tax rate is per bond measure. So the existing measures and accelerating the issuance doesn't affect that capacity at all. So we look at each measure individually and determine how much we can issue under that tax rate threshold per bond measure.
Okay, then I have one final question, and sorry, I don't want to dominate the whole question period, but in 2017, we did that board workshop to assess what things were potentially needed and what the board would support. Are we looking at redoing that assessment as the time frame goes, or are we going to fall back on what we did in 2017?
That would be determined by the board availability, if the board would like. I have a strong sense that the needs or the priorities are not going to change substantially from 2017, when the board was able to spend their monopoly dollars into whichever pot they wanted to spend those. It's up to the board. I mean, if there's something, board availability, that the board would like to do that process, we can. But again, I mean, looking at the list of items, it's a pretty exhaustive, complete list of items. But there's members of this board that were not part of that process.
Yeah, I for one would like to see involvement of this board in making those decisions, because how many of you were here in 2017?
I think that only you and Trustee Marks.
Trustee Marks. Yeah, so I'd like anything that we do to reflect the desires of the people who serve currently.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Trustee Brown and Mr. Surley. We do have a question from Trustee Mejia.
It's more like a comment. I do think it's a good idea to include it, but also to see what process we used last time. and kind of if we could, improve a little bit more or engage more stakeholders. I think the more people we fit into stakeholder group, the better chances once we got to get out there and promote it. So I definitely would like the chance to learn from things we learned from the last process you guys did, and also engage potentially more stakeholders in the process if possible. I appreciate that. I just wanted to piggyback on that.
I would echo what Trustee Mejia says. It's always important. I know it really helped out in terms of those folks that were part of the committee that was part of the Measure D&E. Having a great input from community. So I would definitely like to see that if looking into another possible bond, that we really have a good community input before we make any decisions. If there's no other questions, President West. No? All right. There's just a report, so we'll be moving on to B7, report on first year of the Math Ambassador program. And that is Mr. Rich. Welcome, Mr. Rich.
Thank you, Vice President, Board, Dr. Noguchi. So my name is Mike Rich, and I work in the CIPD department. Today, is there a clicker? Is someone clicking for me? Okay. We don't know where Tim's been. Sorry, Tim. Thank you. So today, the purpose of today's presentation is to provide a history on the rationale for the Math Ambassadors Group, or report on what we've done to date, and then discuss maybe the next steps that we'll be doing. The Math Ambassadors relates directly to Goal 1, which is increase academic achievement and ensure equitable access to enable all students to attain college and career readiness, as well as 2.1 regarding increasing targeted professional development, specifically around mathematics, ELD, effective PLC teams, culturally responsive instruction, and leadership development. So in 2019, the Math Study Committee was formed. They had 3 questions to look at with the goal of making a recommendation to the superintendent. The 3 questions were, what is currently working with respect to mathematics education in Modesto City Schools? And this was specifically geared to 9-12. What is not currently working? And where in the state of California is high school math instruction effective? And the goal was to make a recommendation to the superintendent on future math programming starting for this school year. So some of the key findings from the Math Study Committee included that PLCs, strong teacher-led PLCs, were the key to success. PLCs that focused on formative assessments, use of interim assessments. There was no clear connection that the committee found between specific curriculum and student success. We were really hoping that we would go to a school and we'd find a silver bullet, but there was not one in terms of the curriculum. We saw that schools that offered options for math courses particularly at the 11th and 12th grade level had some good success. That intervention during the school day was vital, and integrated versus traditional track was really a non-issue. We saw successful schools that had integrated. We saw successful schools that had a traditional track. And then course sequence options, like we said, for all learners. So the 3 committee findings that were brought to the board in November of 2019 were that MCS must provide a curriculum that supports ELs, low and high academic achievers, and students with disabilities. The curriculum must be accessible to parents and foster parent engagement. Additionally, it must provide supplemental materials and support differentiation. The second one was interventions are most effective when provided to students during the school day. And the third one, PLCs are an integral part of a successful math program. They are most effective when they are formal, provide meaningful cross-curricular collaboration, and are teacher-driven. And that third bullet point really is the impetus of the Math Ambassadors program. So there are 2 objectives for the Math Ambassadors program. The first is to build a system of support for and by classroom teachers to help identify and implement sound instructional practices. And the second, successful implementation will be demonstrated by an increase in student learning as measured by common formative and summative assessments. So the math ambassadors work collaboratively to identify key standards and targets. They review common assessment results, looking for formative ways to use that data in the classroom to improve their instruction. They discuss and share best practices for effective student learning. They review adopted curriculum and map the alignment with identified standards. And they collaborate with their site level peers with the information that they have at the district level. They bring that back to their site teams. So we currently have 3 math ambassador groups running. This is the first year that we've done this, and so we have a group with Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. These are all volunteers. We reached out to all the school sites and we said we would love one volunteer from each of these curricular areas, not necessarily a department chair. We just want a teacher that could represent your school in this ambassador program. So we have almost every school has a representative in each group. So far, we've met twice. The initial was delayed a little bit just because of COVID, but in October we met. They established team norms. They established the team roles, the content pacing for the new curriculum that we adopted. In the second meeting, they began to look at the IAB, or the interim assessment block data. They also took on the grading task force recommendations that had happened independent of them. They brought those recommendations to the group to review those. And then they've also been heavily invested in distance learning, student engagement best practices. How do we engage the students? A couple of the ambassadors wanted to be here tonight, but with some of the restrictions, they weren't able to make it. So we do have a quick video that we're going to load up and show.
Crystal Hill. I'm a math teacher over at Davis High School, and I'm part of the Algebra 2 Ambassador Group. I was also part of the math study group that recommended we start this Ambassador PLC program. And the reason why we recommended that is because we went to other schools with other comparable districts who were doing better with their math testing scores. This is one of the things that they attributed to part of their success. So we started this year, and our first meeting we just talked about how it would run and what should be like how we should look at the groups and the purpose behind it, which was really just like a teacher-based, let's talk about what's good, what's working, what's not working, and help each other out kind of a situation. And it's good to keep the communication line open. A lot of those teachers that are in part of the committee I had never met before, and it's nice to see that through talking with them that some of the challenges that they're facing at their separate sites are the same challenges I'm facing, and we can work together to kind of fix them. And one of the things that we've had to fix quite a bit this year is like the pacing, because we have a new textbook, but that has helped me individually help here at the site when I talk to other Algebra 2 teachers, making sure that we're kind of in the same spot and that we know what's going on, and that's helped me. Also, one of the things we talked about is how we need to have a common goal for each meeting, and so I've used that in my PLC meetings here individually at the site, is to have a goal for each meeting, so we're not just sitting there chatting and not actually progressing towards success. And I think that the program has some good things going on. I know we look forward to next year and possibly at the end of this year looking into how to better provide instruction and looking at the data for the interim assessments to prepare the students for their SBAC.
Hi, my name is Mark Gonzalez. I'm a teacher math teacher at Bayer High School. I am in the Algebra 1 Math Ambassador Group, and I just want to tell you a little bit about it. One, I really enjoy the group. I think it's a great thing that the district is doing by having this group. It allows us as a district to communicate more from, school to school, rather than just working with our own school and our own teachers at our own school. What I see it doing is eventually getting to the point where we can, look at each other's tests and create tests together and build rubrics together, so that way we know across the board that kids are getting the same type of instruction and tests and getting the same kind of grading that they would here at Bayer or any other school in the district. It allows us even to get more communication just, outside of our own school. And I know I do enjoy extremely the group that I work with here at Bayer, but I know that we like to hear from others, and we want to know, hey, is what we're doing, is anybody interested in it, or how would they change it up? And we'd love to take those ideas and grow from them. And I think other teachers in our district do the same thing, and that's why if we all have the ability to work together like this across the district, then we can also then go back and take it back to our groups and build on our own schools as well from what we've learned in this ambassadors group. But I really enjoy the Math Ambassadors group, and again, I know the Algebra 1 group that I have worked with here at Bayer and in the group are really great people, and we seem to have the same type of goal. What can we do to really help the students improve and learn, and in ourselves, how can we improve and learn as well?
So at the end of each meeting, we ask the teachers these three things, the PLC group. What information are you going to share back with your site level PLC? So what did you learn here that we need to bring down? What do you want this group to do before the next meeting? What's your homework? What are we going to look at? What data are we going to bring? What assessment are we going to give? What standards are we going to look at? And then they set the date for their next meeting so that they all can be there. So it's not some arbitrary date, but it's something that they all commit to. So the next steps is they're going to meet again this month. It's usually right around the time that we're giving a benchmark assessment. They're going to discuss hybrid instructional best practices. They're going to look at diagnostic assessments, develop that for the beginning of next school year to help us find what holes we need to plug. They're going to review benchmark selection for next year, and then they're also going to adjust the pacing guide based on what we've learned through the first year of our adoption. Ultimately, the goal is to get this process working well so that then we could expand it to other curricular areas as well. I am available at this time for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. I'm going to take it out to the public. Ms. Chambers, is there any comments from the public? Ms. Noonan, is there any comments to read from the public via email?
No, we did not receive any.
Thank you very much. With that being said, is there any questions or comments from our board? I do have President West and Trustee Maestas, so I'll start off with President West.
Thank you. I really appreciate these ambassadors. You mentioned that they're volunteering their time, and that just says a lot to me with everything else that's going on and everything that's on these teachers' plates right now. They're volunteering to me to improve things, and I appreciate that. My question is, how do these ambassadors collaborate with our coaches? Do they work together? Is there information that's collaborative between the two groups, or is there any kind of working together at all?
Just make sure I heard you right. You asked how do they collaborate with the coaches or with each other? The coaches. Thank you. Okay. So the coaches, there is a coach with each group that is there helping them run the agenda, but it is the teachers' meeting. It's their opportunity to discuss. The coach is there to help them pull whatever data they might need, whatever resources are available, but it is a teacher-led PLC.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. I've got a few questions, and then just some really comments. I'm excited about it all. I mean, it's great when you can get a group of math teachers together to talk math and instruction. One of the things that I thought, first year, obviously you've got your core Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2. And I just, as this moves along, I know when I taught AP Calculus and AP Statistics, the most professional development that I got out of was talking to other AP teachers. And there's a lot of mathematics in high school that's singletons. and they really need to be able to get together. So adding in some teachers that are singletons, I think is going to excel those. You know, the finite math teachers, the business math teachers, things like that. And then include, I'm sure your alternative ed teachers are in this as well?
Correct.
Not just the
Yes.
comprehensive
Yes.
sites. Okay. So
As,
those
as
are
well as junior high teachers at the algebra level.
excellent. Yeah, all of those perspectives are so great for this conversations. So that was one. I did have a question about the question that they come back with. What information will you share with your site PLCs? Do you have any insight on how so far the Math Ambassador, the district PLC program here, has helped the site PLC program kind of focus on the PLC work for each of those sites in terms of their common formative assessments, in terms of data collection and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we've heard back from the ambassadors as we asked them, hey, what's helpful for you, is the idea that pacing this year is a little bit different with the whole online instruction and how we're addressing things in the new curriculum. And they reported back, particularly the Algebra 2 group reported back, that having that opportunity to talk with everybody from another site and then bring that back to their own site, they felt relieved. They felt like, okay, we're not in a bad position. We're all kind of in the same boat. I can see that this school's doing this. Let's reach out to them and kind of find out what they can do to help us. So they have reported that, kind of like you heard Mark say, like it's really helpful to hear back from all the sites. In regards to your idea of singletons, one of the reasons we started with these 3 courses this year was because we adopted a new book for those 3, and at the next board meeting we'll be bringing forward some other adoptions for kind of what we would call those fringe math classes, which would include the AP Calc and the stats and the financial, and so that would be a great opportunity once we have that new book to then start that process with them as well.
Excellent. Can I keep asking the questions I have? Is that okay?
We have no one on the dock, so go ahead. Oh.
Okay. I feel like Trustee Brown in the last question. I'm sorry, lost my train of thought here. You mentioned there were 3 things with the Math Study Committee came up with their findings. Was the interventions are most effective when provided during the school day. I know that this is not about the Math Ambassadors doesn't necessarily hit that as the strategy, but was there anything that came out of the Math Ambassadors that's helping the schools think about this intervention process throughout the school day?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think this year we've had our eyes open to maybe some different ways to provide intervention, just out of necessity of what we have. So I know that the virtual Wednesdays, that a lot of sites are using those. We've got some before after school. The intersession opportunities that we gave over, while they're not during the school day, gave students an opportunity to meet in person. This is definitely the next area that we need to address from the Math Study Committee, is how do we provide those in a normal school year? How do we provide those interventions?
Awesome. Okay, I got one more question real quick. Is that okay? Okay, one more question. The next steps. I know in April they're meeting for those 4 things. I just want to address the diagnostic assessment issue or development. We've got a lot of unfinished learning throughout the entire country, right, because of COVID. And one of the ways that we address that unfinished learning is through some sort of readiness assessment. And really the research shows unit by unit, not necessarily a big assessment. And so I just want to really urge to look at these resources available out here. We even got some resources coming out of our county that will allow teachers to really look unit by unit and assessing students as you go by, without allowing all kids to reach grade level content. That's our goal, right? We don't want to reteach 8th grade. We want to teach Algebra 1, but we want to let all students access Algebra 1 at the moment that they need intervention or they need readiness. So I love the idea of looking at it now, because it's going to be so important for all our kids next year. So I just commend all the teachers that are a part of this. This is a fabulous program, and I just want to hear about more and more as we go on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Trustee Brown?
Yes, strange year, lots changed. we approached the year with new curriculum, new approaches, new methodology, and now we've got some special supports in place. And I just want to ask how the district feels we are doing with math, given all of these variables that we've had to work with this year. How have our students benefit or been hurt through the process? Were they hurt because we introduced new curriculum during the pandemic?
It's a good question, Trustee Brown. I would say that had we not changed our curriculum, we would not have had the digital resources we needed to be able to present in a distance learning format. All of our curricula for these courses prior to the new adoption were paper pencil based. We did not have any virtual or digital assessment tools. We did not have a way for teachers to assign the work from the curricula. There were not videos to help with supporting them when they struggled. There were not the language supports that we needed for those that are at home. All of that is available in the new curriculum. Anytime we implement a new curriculum, there needs to be a substantial amount of training, and there's a process to go through. That's certainly been hindered by this school year with all the changes that have happened. So there'll be a lot that we still need to continue to do with that. But I still believe that the Math Studies Committee recommendation of changing that curriculum was the right decision. I feel like we would be in a worse place if we had not done that.
So follow-up question to that, new technologies, new ways of using time and energy. What's next on the horizon for looking at further technology?
In regards specifically to mathematics?
Yes.
One of the tools that's available to us right now through the curriculum is the Math IXL platform, which is just embedded in the curriculum. And we through the pilot process, we asked kids, hey, what did you like better, this curriculum or that curriculum? And it was amazing. Even young, 7th and 8th graders would say, I liked this curriculum, responding specifically to the IXL, because it told me what I got wrong when I got it wrong, and it helped me get the answer after that. So they're recognizing that this tool that has this built-in differentiation and this right in the moment, that tool helped them learn better, and I feel like that's the direction that we're going to be able to go to help differentiate learning, and kind of like you said, Trustee, about making it accessible to all learners. That kind of tool will really help us progress.
So on a side note, I'd like to talk to you, Mike, about something that I'm directly involved with, or indirectly involved with, that helps to improve our instructors' efficiency with their use of time. So outside of the meeting, but there's some great things happening, and it's happening from our own graduates who are recognizing the need of students.
Great.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. Is there any other questions, comments? If not, I'd just like to say great job to everyone, our teachers, to our staff. And great job for us having experts in the different areas tonight to ask the good questions. So this is only a report. So we'll be moving on to our B8 approval of first reading of proposed draft of board policy VP 4119.24. BP 421924 and VP 431924, maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions. This is Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez and trustees and Superintendent Noguchi and President West virtually. Last year, the board engaged in a concerted and extensive effort to update the district's board policies and administrative regulations to reflect updated policy language from Education Code, as represented by board policy guidance from CSBA and Gamut. As part of that ongoing effort for us to stay current with law and or have the most robust and clear policies to serve as a foundation for district operations, we bring forward for the board's consideration the board policy 4119.24, maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions. Here to present the first reading of this new board policy is Mr. Stephen Beauchesne, Supervisor of Compliance in the HR Department.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Vice President Lopez, trustees of the board, Dr. Noguchi, and members of cabinet, my name is Stephen Beauchesne. I'm the Supervisor of Compliance in the Human Resources Office. I'm here before you this evening to present for a first reading Board Policy 4119.24 et sec, maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions. This board policy is a new policy to be added, and while much of the content contained in this policy is also stated in other policies we already have, for example, sexual harassment policies, child abuse prevention policies, and appropriate use of technology policies, this policy is unique in that it contains all of this information in one centralized and uniform policy, which addresses this subject matter both specifically and exclusively. It was found prudent, given the seriousness and importance of this topic, that all of this information be gathered into one single policy for reference and guidance. It is intended, of course, to serve the purpose of both expressing clearly the kind of content that is strictly prohibited, which perhaps goes without saying, but is important enough to reiterate. But it also serves to provide guidance to employees who are increasingly utilizing various forms of district electronic communication tools to connect with students for legitimate educational purposes. Given the increasing frequency and prevalence of these communication tools, there can be questions that arise from time to time regarding best practices in a given situation, and this policy could help to provide guidance on the expectations for employees to properly maintain the appropriate professional boundaries in the employee-student relationship, as well as to avoid any potential appearances of impropriety. So with that context in mind, it is my pleasure to present for your consideration Board Policy 4119.24 et sec, and at this time I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Beauchesne. Ms. Chambers, are there any comments from the public?
No, there are none.
Thank you. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments to read from the public?
No, we did not receive any.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up for questions or comments from the board. We have Trustee Marks.
So thank you so much. I really liked your comment that you said this is all in one document, because when I read through this, I was like, yeah, we have that. So it's nice to have it in one place. And like you said, it's conduct that goes without a comment, but it's needed written down now. So it's disappointing that we're at this place, but I appreciate that we have this all in one. Well, it's a few board policies or reference numbers, but it's really going to help, because you can just hold this up and say, this is what it says. So thank you. Thank you for Mr. Henderson. I think you found this at CSBA and put it in. So
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I think this is great.
Thank you very much. Is there any other? Oh, Trustee Brown.
As I read this policy, there was one sentence that caused me a little bit of concern. I want to just get some clarification if I can, please.
Sure.
On the very first page, the second paragraph from the bottom, it says, adults shall not intrude on a student's physical or emotional boundaries unless necessary in an emergency. I understand the emergency, but let me keep reading. It says, or to serve a legitimate purpose related to instruction, counseling, student health, or student or staff safety. I'm uncomfortable with crossing boundaries in instruction, and I need some clarification of what could allow that.
So that would really depend ultimately on the kind of instruction that we're talking about. There may be instances where conduct that normally would not be appropriate might be appropriate in the limited situation where it is directly relevant to instruction that's being undertaken, for example, sex education. With that said, this is really meant to provide a level of scale for context that is related to what would be appropriate based on what is the legitimate educational purpose at the time. It's hard to give hypotheticals because it's really going to be so fact dependent and situational. But what I would say is, the obvious example would be normally we would not allow any sort of physical contact outside of an emergency situation. However, if a student is choking, for example, it may be necessary to physically intervene. So in situations like that, this is meant to encompass those areas where a subject matter may be normally inappropriate to address with a student, but because of a very limited and narrow context where it's directly related to some item of curricula, they would be allowed to appropriately address those topics.
One example that just quickly comes to mind might be PE teachers teaching the concepts of basketball and showing how to block out other players, running a trap or something like that, that may demonstrate with the students, physically make contact, but it be in a manner that has a direct curricular purpose to it. You can say whether or not that might serve as a good example or not, but that's one that comes to mind. It's cases where they're still instructing, they're still teaching the curriculum, and we would hope and have an understanding with the student that's what that intent is, but it could occur.
Okay, my only concern is that I don't want a loophole left allowing someone to say, well, I needed to do such and such because it was educationally appropriate.
We'll make a note of that and see if maybe there's some phrasing that might tighten that up when we come back.
What I would add is that in any instance where there is a legitimate concern that proper boundaries have been transgressed, the district would have the administrative authority through an investigation to make determinations about reasonableness and appropriateness. Findings of fact would be made, and the district investigator, through their report, would be able to make determinations regarding whether or not the stated bases for the employee's conduct would match with basic conceptions of reasonableness given the circumstances.
And I do have one additional question. I know that lots of nonprofit agencies and agencies that serve youth have come under a lot of criticism because there are situations where there has been one-on-one contact with an adult and a child. I don't see anything in our policies that define when and if that's ever appropriate for one-on-one contact. In a counseling session, I think it's hard to say that it can't happen, but how do we protect our students in a counseling session? Is there anything that needs to be addressed in this policy or elsewhere that helps protect students from unnecessary one-on-one contact?
Well, what I would say is that item number 2 on page A, at the very bottom, specifically states that being alone with a student outside the view of others would be an example of conduct that's prohibited. Now, in a counseling context, you could still maintain privacy just so long as the interactions between the two were visible. A window, for example, would probably be sufficient. So we would not encourage, as a general policy, one-on-one alone contact for obvious reasons. But I think there are plenty of ways that we could make arrangements such that if, in the context of a counseling session, for example, such one-on-one contact would be prudent, if not necessary, we could do so in a way that there are certain safeguards.
So I mentioned counseling, but what about meetings with an administrator? Are those done in rooms with windows, or is privacy necessary for those for some of those meetings? And does that open opportunities for criticism?
That's a good question. So what I would say is that one's going to be difficult in the context of when you have site administration who's trying to address an issue with a student. you could easily create a policy or a practice where other administrators or other interested site staff would be included in certain meetings if the need arose. Or we can change the way that we handle certain meetings. The other thing that would be a common practice is that parents would be included in certain meetings. So it's really going to depend. But generally speaking, it's really about being cognizant about the fact that there's one, context, and two, the ability to arrange these one-on-one meetings in a fashion where there are certain safeguards.
So, Trustee Brown, let me hopefully provide a little bit of context. While I recognize there may be situations where we don't want an adult and a child together by themselves, that's the world in which we work in, unless we double the adults at any one school, either for counseling or for admin. On the daily basis at every school, there are administrators working with children by themselves. And I don't think that there could be a time that we create the space where there's always two adults to do that. We're working in a system with thousands of, at a high school, thousands of kids and very few adults. And so if you look at the proportion of adults to kids. So I think what this particular board policy does is really lays out the context by which folks need to follow. And if we find a situation where an adult and a child are put together and there's something that's been inappropriate or something that's not safe for those kids, this is the reasons why we're outlining this, so to be very clear what the expectations are. Unless we pass a high school bond and we make sure that we create a bunch of offices with a bunch of windows which create that space, and maybe that's something we'll look at as we move forward, right, in those situations. But daily there's adults and kids one-on-one, either counseling or admin or teachers, because that's the nature of our business.
I'd also suggest that the layout and location of our administrative offices, our counseling offices are within trafficked or populated areas and other offices where a principal, for your example, has an assistant, administrative assistant, or other staff who would know of the child's coming and goings. I think the intent here is more remote locations. A student needs to report to make up a test in a room. I remember as a teacher myself, kind of the mantra, you keep that door open, maybe let somebody know that they're there or bring a friend. And that's the kind of culture and practice that I hope this begins to put into more of a routine.
Yeah, I've just been fearful with the trust and liability issues that have come forward, that schools could be a target going forward. And I just want to make sure that we are not overlooking something that would allow us to be criticized by the public.
That's a good point.
Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Trustee Marks?
So Mr. Brown brought up some good points on that first page that you brought up. I'm wondering if it might be helpful to delete the last portion of that sentence and leave it as adults shall not intrude on a student's physical or emotional boundaries unless necessary in an emergency, period. Because the rest of it is fairly vague. And I think that's what you were alluding to, is the vagueness and the opportunity for it not creating a safe environment. At least that's what I heard from you, but maybe you wanted to clarify it. But would deleting that last set of that sentence help?
We delete it, but maybe clarify it.
Yeah, because I felt like legitimate was such a vague word. Like what does that mean, for someone if I'm looking at that, what are you saying there? So the legitimate purpose related to instruction, counseling, student health, or student or staff safety. So just trying to say, what are we trying to say here in this sentence?
Well, what I would say is legitimate first is clarified by the following words. So the reason why a lot of those words are in there is to give an example of what would be within the purview of legitimate conduct by an employee. And in that regard, it would be anything done for those purposes listed there that are a part of their normal duties in their job description.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Brown's okay with it, so I could see where he was going, and I thought there was a way to help out there, so if you're good with it. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. If not, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of the proposed draft of board policy VP 4119.24, 4219.24, and 4319.24, maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions? We have a motion by Trustee Mejia. Do we have a second? Second by Trustee Maestas. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. Just to clarify, Trustee Irvin, you said aye? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Now we're moving on to B9, approval of Modesto City Schools and California Schools Employees Association's collective bargaining agreement for the 2020-2023 school years. And this is also Mr. Henderson.
It is. Good evening again. It's my pleasure to bring this item forward and report that upon approval this evening, negotiations with the California School Employees Association, known as CSEA, will be concluded for this last round. The district and CSEA engaged in many negotiation sessions leading up to a tentative agreement in October, if you'll recall, 2020. That was unfortunately at that time not approved through ratification by the bargaining unit membership in November. The parties returned to the table to resume negotiations, and we reached a determination that we would benefit from having an outside mediator come and assist us in getting to a resolution. Both the district and CSEA engaged in good faith in the mediation process, and in February, we reached another tentative agreement. CSEA leadership made a concerted effort to educate their membership about the agreement, to answer their questions, and encourage classified staff to understand the negotiations process as well as actively participate in voting on the agreement. On March 16th, 2021, CSEA held a vote on the revised tentative agreement, and the agreement was successfully ratified by the membership. Some highlights of the agreement include it extends the collective bargaining agreement through, as you mentioned, June 30th, 2023. There are reopeners in each of the 2 years until then. Of course, pay and allowance and health and welfare, those are always automatic reopeners, and then each party has 2 additional articles per school year. There's a one-time off-the-salary schedule payment equal to 1% of the annual base salary for the 19 and 20 school year, and an ongoing on-the-salary schedule increase of 1% applied to the classified salary schedule retroactive to July 1st of 2020. Effective after this approval, the CIPD department is excited to get moving. Classified staff will have the opportunity for the 0.5% professional development provision for the 2021 school year. And in a very significant structural change for the district, we're increasing the district contribution effective April 1st from $700 up to $1,000 per month toward a district medical plan. Depending on the plan chosen, remainder is able to be applied to dental or vision. We also did some cleanup of allowable medical coverage, qualifying for cash in lieu compensation for those folks who provide proof of being a part of another medical group plan. And there's agreement in gradually phasing out of a cash in lieu compensation for employees who do not show proof of other group health coverage. There's a few last things, some GPS systems for our field trip buses, improved overtime opportunities for certain groups within the classified unit, and we updated some language to be consistent with the law and probationary period and evaluation process. One thing I'm excited about is the ability to add a category of exceed standards to the classified evaluation tool, process, and form, which has been gone for a while, and it would be nice to validate the work of those folks who exceed expectations. There's a new article to provide continuity during school closures, which of course we hope not to have, but due to fires and other events, as we've just experienced and still are, has occurred, so give us some continuity there. And last but not least, to increase the district contribution to the CSEA Retirement Trust Fund. So the agreement is consistent with our district goals, and the fiscal impact is stated in the board item. As stated in a recommended motion, in accordance with the government code, the following consideration of certification that the costs incurred by the district can be met, it's recommended that the board approve the Modesto City Schools and CSEA's collective bargaining agreement for 2020 to 2023. Thank you for indulging me with that extra time to hit some of those high points.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. Ms. Chambers, are there any comments from the public? Thank you very much. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments to read from the public?
No, we did not receive any.
Thank you. Are there any comments from or questions from the board? Hearing none, I just want to say thank you to everyone, taking to our bargaining team to get this come together and get this done. Thank you to the CSEA for all the work and input. So with that, do I hear a motion to approve the Modesto City Schools and California Schools Employees Association collective bargaining agreement for the years 2020-2023? Trustee Marks, the motion. Do I hear a second? Trustee Irvin, second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. And now moving on to items to be placed on future board agenda, Board of Education agenda. Do anyone? I see Mr. Maestas.
I would like to maybe suggest we look at the grade requirements for extracurricular activities, specifically for sports, with the possibility of a waiver or some other way. I know we already looked at this once, but clearly from the information we got today, maybe we need to look at it again, with there only being 2 months left and lots of kids wanting to play and the mental health of those kids. So I'm just suggesting maybe we look at that one more time.
So, Mr. Goodell, April 19th and then into May 4th, how many sports will we have left after May 4th when this would be, if we were to change this at this point?
Great question. There would be a number of sports that would still be ongoing, depending on which league they're in. We're in 2 leagues. The CCAL, most sports wrap up mid-May, just before finals week. However, in the WAC, which includes Johansson, Bayer, and Davis, they have a number of sports that actually go into mid-June. So there would be some students, if that was reconsidered, that would work, while other sports will have concluded by April 19th.
So I think what we need here is 4 board members to agree to bring that back. And if we have 4 board members, which would be the majority, then we could bring that back for April 19th for approval May 4th.
Do I motion, or how do we do that? I'm one.
So there's 1. There's 2. Would student representative count? Oh, he wants to make. Yeah.
one of the things we brought up when we were talking about waiving some of the requirements for sports was we wanted to make it sports as an incentive for students to raise their grades at the end of the year. And I think, if I remember correctly, we did some things with citizenship and made it more accessible for students who may have fallen behind and allowed them to play sports even if they didn't meet the grade eligibility, but they had to go to the tutoring session with their sports and they could still play. I think that waiving the requirement altogether would not motivate them to improve their grades. There's really nothing they would be striving for, since the requirement would be waived for the rest of the year. So if we keep the grade requirement at a 2.0, and I believe no more than 2 Fs, that'll motivate students who are on the cusp to raise their grades and be able to play sports and finish the year, and that would improve fail rates as well.
Can we just get a clarification on what that is one more time?
So currently, based on the resolution that the board approved a month and a half ago or so, students that are not academically eligible can participate on every sports team. The only thing that they can't participate in is the actual game or competition of that sport. There are a number of districts locally that don't have an academic eligibility. Basically, they have a probationary period for student athletes that could have a 1.0 would still be able to compete. To Student Representative Carranza's point, that was kind of where we were going with that resolution, providing that extra step for students to stay motivated but still be engaged to a level where they're being motivated. Now, the grades for third quarter have already been completed. So we did, third quarter eligibility will take effect, I want to say, next Monday or the following Monday for the remainder of this year. But also recognize that the work the students are doing now in the second semester that they will be finishing in May will impact potentially eligibility for the fall. So that's the lay of the land right now.
I think we need to be careful here, just because this wasn't on the agenda, so we're going deeper than just asking for something to be put on the board agenda. And usually Cindy checks me on this, and I didn't see the eye on that one. But so if this is something that we want to bring back, then I would ask for a motion and then have the 4 board members to approve that to bring it back on April 19th.
So far we have 2, Student Representative Carranza, were you a third or just comment? Okay, so we have currently 2. I'll go ahead and be a third, but is there a time?
Can you clarify what you're asking? So we're asking.
We need 4 board members to say aye to get to put this on a future board agenda. So currently we're standing at 3. Okay, so I guess it will not. Okay, now we're moving on to. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
We got a motion by Trustee Marks. Seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor? Say aye. Meeting adjourned.